the death of God is a real thing. We're trying to pull him out of schools and off the dollar bill and from, any practice of politics, or, we essentially want to get rid of God, the mind of man. Okay. So in a purely scientific process, having a brain as a product of random mutation and natural selection kind of flies in the face of what's called epistemology. So epistemology is man's ability to comprehend rationally the universe around him. It's our ability to have knowledge, essentially. So existentialists identified what's called the death of God at the hands of scientific materialists for the principal reason of the angst that many modern people experience and that they themselves felt, right? So that quote by Bertrand Russell about all of man's achievements being crushed inevitably in the slow death of the solar system is kind of the angst that they're talking about in scientific materialism, right? Is that there is no point to this life. Sartre, who was a French philosopher and I believe a bishop, said, no finite point has any meaning without an infinite reference point. And so what does he mean by that? He means that we as finite beings here really have no meaning if we're not looking to something that is infinite, which would be life after death, right? For a religious perspective. And if this life is all we've got, then what is the meaning, right? Nietzsche said that the death of God would bring about destruction and nihilism, which I think we see pretty prevalent in today's society, because we're in this environment today where the death of God is a real thing. We're trying to pull him out of schools and off the dollar bill and from, any practice of politics, or, we essentially want to get rid of God. We're rewriting history. Science is saying that, it didn't come from religious axioms. People are arguing that, religion is the great perpetrator of evil throughout all history. I mean, on and on and on and on. And so it's like, there's this real, battle between the two of whether or not that makes any sense. So talking about epistemology, epistemology is the study of the basis of and justification for human knowledge. Greek episteme is knowledge and logos is reason or logic. It's one of the four main branches of philosophy, which are metaphysics, logic, ethics, and epistemology. Theism solves some of the tough issues related to epistemology. Since the Enlightenment period, philosophers have found it difficult to justify a belief in the reliability of the human knowledge of the physical world. So how do we know that our perceptions of reality are accurate? So you and I are sitting here having a conversation. How do we know that this is actually happening? That our perceptions of this are accurate? How do we know that we're not in a simulation? This isn't the Matrix, that you're dreaming?
Deductive reasoning.
Okay. So if deductive reasoning is what we have to use and that's how we operate, then you can see that, it's not empirical. And this is the argument that science makes. So many of the neo-Darwinists, scientific materialists deny the reliability of the human mind or our ability to form accurate representations of a mind-independent world around us. David Hume initiated much of this skepticism in the 18th century. So he posited that the laws of nature were learned primarily through inductive reasoning. Example would be observing a ball falling to the ground after lifting it and then letting it drop. We infer that all suspended bodies fall. But Hume pointed out that such inferences are inevitably based upon a limited number of observations and cannot be proved empirically. We have to rely on the inductive reasoning to posit the uniformity of nature. To try and prove the uniformity of nature, we use past and present experiences where suspended balls fell. Inductive reasoning. Circular logic or justification. Hume's conclusion, we cannot trust our ability to know the world around us. This problem identified by Hume, the problem of knowledge, raises the fundamental question of the reliability of the human mind. By showing that the uniformity of nature could not be justified by an appeal to repeated sense experience, Hume actually showed that the human mind assumed such uniformity. But since Hume shows that the assumption could not be justified empirically, he doubted our ability to know the world around us. Many other neo-Darwinists followed this thought process. How then does one act if the mind cannot be trusted and the uniformity of nature cannot accurately be deducted? So, to work through that in a simpler way for anybody that's listening to this, because that's kind of a complex sentence there. What Hume is arguing is that when we look at a ball fall, a suspended object, and we make an inference that all spherical, non-suspended objects fall, we essentially are saying that there is uniformity to nature. But we haven't exhausted all experiments of balls falling in nature. And so it's not an empirical fact. It's inductive or deductive reasoning that we've utilized to draw that conclusion. Now, to prove that conclusion, we're going to go back and look at spherical objects falling in the past, spherical objects falling now, and then posit that in the future, spherical objects will fall. Well, we used inductive reasoning to come to the conclusion, and then we used inductive reasoning to prove the conclusion. So we're in this circular logic of inductive reasoning where nothing is empirical, which is what led Hume to say we can't actually trust our mind because our reasoning is not empirical. It's inductive or deductive. And so then what happens is you say, okay, the human cognitive ability, because it came through this random mutation and natural selection and can't actually be empirically proven, is not able to be trusted.